Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making your way here, checking out the series. Hopefully you know what to do. Like what you see, what you hear, hit that subscribe button. I put 3 new interviews every single week, so it's a great way to keep up with all of your favorite artists. And I got to tell you, I am really excited to have a special episode today with Jack Johnson. In fact, we taped this on, I guess you'd call it an industry Zoom call. Like 30 or 40 radio station programmers, music directors from all around the country hopped on. And I want to thank Brushfire Records and Republic Records for asking me to moderate the interview with Jack Johnson as we got to talk about his new record called Meet the Moonlight. I point all of that out anyway because there'll be some references to other people that you obviously can't see, and just know that they were there watching along with you just long before you. So that's what we got in store. Let's jump into this. It's Meet the Moonlight is the album, Kyle Meredith with Jack Johnson. Well, hello, Jack.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Thanks for joining us.
So let's get into, I got to give you the compliment here first with Meet the Moonlight. I'm such a fan. I know a lot of us are such big fans of all the records that you've done over the years. This one feels different. I love this record right from the beginning. It sounds different. The content feels different. What you're singing about is obviously poignant and important. So just from the start, when did this record start? Because obviously you're reflecting everything that's going on around us, or so it seems at least.
It was a new process, work with Blake Mills, who I was a big fan of his music already. I didn't have any idea he produced music. And then somebody mentioned, Emmett, who's actually on this call, said that he produces records, and realized he produced that Alabama Shakes record, which I loved, one of my favorite records that year. And all the sonic quality on the record and everything just really was something I enjoyed. So I started talking with him, and then we just kind of hit it off. We became pretty good friends, just talking about music in general, both music fans, and got together in a studio for about a week. And I never argued with somebody so much, but it was in a really good way. It was just like we'd constantly be debating things and pushing each other on stuff. And it was fun. Like even last night, he just called me to figure out what the rules are to this card game I'd taught him called Cafe con Leche. And I could tell it was a party going on at his house, but he called me to get all the rules. And I was thinking, that's pretty cool that, we can now just hang out and be friends. And we didn't hate each other after the process of making a record. I think that's a really big success in itself. The song that probably about a year ago, I started kind of writing the songs. I'm just always sort of putting little bits together. And at some point I have enough. So, to put together an album. And like you mentioned, I think, of course, it's going to be a reaction to the strange few years we've all had. It's still got, personal songs about love and loss and all that stuff that everybody always is going through. But also, I guess I was focusing a lot about empathy, tribalism, the feeling of isolation, all these things that have been kind of amplified the past few years. And I think Open Mind, there's a song called Open Mind. It's the first song on our record. And I wanted to start it because, it's an important time to keep an open mind. But as I was finishing that song, it was cool. Blake actually asked me, is it even good to have an open mind? I mean, people always give it a positive connotation, but like, is it always a good thing? So I started just meditating on the idea of what it is to keep an open mind. And that's how the record starts. And did you get to hear the whole record? Cool.
Yeah. And especially, because you're right, that line right there, it sets up everything. I didn't know that at the time. You figure that out once the record is over and everything. But that's I think that's what I was getting to, because it feels like it's almost a concept record in that sense.
Yeah. Right.
And I don't know if that's that's not always the case with you, but I think maybe Curious George soundtrack, that's a weird relation to this one, I guess is what I'm getting to. But do you find it's helpful to have, do you need something to write about? Because this has a lot of something in it.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. I think they're all concept records. The concept is just like what the hell's been going on in Jack's mind for the last 2 years. And yeah, I don't always need, I guess I do always need something. I never sit down to write a song because I think like, it'd be good to have a song. It's always a reaction to something. And I think that you know, if you're lucky, they sort of come. And sometimes I feel like nothing's coming for a few months, but I've learned that rather than consider that a writer's block or anything like that, it's just time to inhale instead of exhale. You can't just constantly be exhaling. So it's life experiences, reading books, just talking to friends and conversation, all those kind of things for the inhale that need to happen to be able to have new songs. And so whenever they come, I just grab onto them and I try to finish them. I find if I don't finish them, they sit around for a long time. And then it's fun to bring all the little pieces and realize that ultimately these two songs, I was thinking about the same thing, sometimes from different perspectives. One becomes the verse, one becomes the chorus sometimes. Sorry about this truck backing up over here, if you can hear it. And my cat, there's a cat climbing around too. I don't know if you can hear that, but hopefully but yeah, so the songs come along when they do.
Yeah. With your and Blake's relationship, I also read about, trying to find that common ground with each other, and you would share playlists and find the artists. What are the artists that you all eventually decided on? What were on those playlists?
Yeah. Our favorite artist in the Venn diagram that overlap is Greg Brown. Once we both discovered how much we love Greg Brown, it became kind of a no-brainer. We just would nerd out on all our favorite Greg Brown songs. He, in my mind, is like one of the great lyricists of all time. He kind of reminds me of Kurt Vonnegut was to write songs, what it might be like, because something I love that Kurt Vonnegut wrote one time is that with writing, you build up tension. At some point, you have to let the reader or the listener release the tension, and you can choose laughter or crying. And it's really the same thing. It's just the tension releasing. And he always chose laughter, Kurt Vonnegut. Even if it was a heavy situation, he would let that tension release with the laughter. And I think Greg Brown is great at doing that. And that was something we both talked about and enjoy in his music. So Greg Brown was one of them. JJ Cale. It's funny because JJ Cale is somebody I never grew up listening to much. And then when my first album came out, I would say that would probably be the person that almost the most people would ask, like, oh, you sound like pretty heavily influenced by JJ Cale. And at that point I knew like Cocaine or a few songs, but I hadn't really checked it. And then I just love JJ Cale. Like, man, I just got really into him the last few years. And so that was somebody we'd listen to for production ideas. And just the way sometimes it sounds more like somebody's just doing something like this for the rhythm track. And so there's a lot of that on this album, a lot of building from backs of guitars and whatever sort of thing is around to tap on. And then sometimes we would add drums in, like as we would listen to it and think the song deserved a little more low end or something. That's a funny way to put it. The song deserves some, but it's we would add in some kick or whatever, and we kind of would race the instruments between Blake and I. He's better at playing most of them, but I was still, it's my record, so I got to kind of like overrule him sometimes. But a lot of times, if he would play something, I would just love it so much. But bass lines, drum beats, and everything, it's mostly the two of us on the record. But I brought the band in right at the end, and we added some stuff to different things. It was really just the process that kind of led to us building these almost sketches, and they became the actual album. And then, but I love my band. I love having them on the record. So we all got together at the end. We Don't Look Now is a song we all did together, kind of a live track in the studio. And then they added a bunch of different things. But I drank a lot of coffee, so I tend to digress, and I forget what the question even was. I'm just rambling now.
Digress away. Some of those, once you see the credits to the album, everyone, it's very fun because there are some things like bottles, and I know there's some videos out there of you playing the bottles. It's whatever works, right? It's as you said, whatever's around.
That was a funny one because one night we were having a beer in a studio, and I was showing them this trick that I figured out one time that I wish I had a beer bottle so I could show you guys. Way cooler than trying to explain it. But if you're singing Dazed and Confused by Led Zeppelin, it's the bass line, the dong, dong, you get like a descending bass line. So every time you take a sip of beer and then you blow into it, the pitch gets a little lower. So you can do this thing where I've been dazed, and then you keep doing the bass line as you sing it. And I showed that to Blake one night, and then he was really impressed, or at least I think he was. And he was like, oh, we got to get that on a song. So we ended up figuring out with tuners, like, figuring out the pitch of different bottles. Like we'd tape it and say, okay, E flat, and then tape another one and say F. And so I had all these bottles laying around, and I'd hold them, and we did this kind of counter melody in this song called Costume Party. That yeah, it came out kind of cool. Like the beer bottles became my favorite instrument on the album, maybe.
And now you've got a writing credit for them. So that's.
I don't know if you could tell, it's totally raining over here.
Doesn't look too much like it, actually.
Okay, good,
but yeah, you're getting wet. We appreciate you're taking one for the team with the rain there.
There's rain now dripping onto my computer. I'm basically sacrificing my computer for this Zoom call. So
appreciate that.
I'll appreciate,
you know what? This is how I can feel like I'm in Hawaii. That's about the closest I'm coming right now. So beyond the record and what you've been doing, I wanted to ask about the Learning Farm, because that's one of the newest initiatives, right?
Yeah, that's really exciting. We've had Kukua Hawaii Foundation now for 20 years, and we've mostly been working in classrooms. It's the quick version. It's environmental education for kids. It's a nonprofit, and we do everything from garden education in schools, beach cleanups to kind of bring awareness to the plastic problem in the ocean, send kids on field trips to farms with grants for field trips, and lots of different things. We've been kind of mostly working in the schools, and recently we acquired an 8-acre farm and some buildings that we can have a farm stand and all kinds of exciting stuff. So now we can actually have the field trips come into our learning farm, and we have high school interns over there working right now, and it's a lot of fun. It's really rewarding. It's been exciting just to see little parts of the farm build out. It doesn't give enough credit really, because there's like constructed native wetlands in the corners where we're actually attracting native insects and birds coming back, and that's already been happening. It's like one of my favorite things, just to go over there in the morning and sit around and watch these native birds come back to this area now that they have a little zone they can be in. And yeah, so I love it. It's a lot of fun, and it's been great to see for the community. A lot of participation over here in Hawaii amongst all the teachers and the community members. So that's what I've been spending a lot of time doing.
Yeah, when you're not on tour, like how much time does this take up? Is this what you're doing mostly when you're not touring?
Yeah, I'd say it is what I do mostly, and it's like I said, I mean, it's really rewarding and fun, and I feel like if anything, it kind of gives me more things to write about. It's like I'll see all kinds of things out there and interactions, and I don't know. So even though it takes up a lot of my time, I feel like it's also been kind of serendipitous with music. We play a lot of music out on the farm. Actually, it's fun. Like sometimes pauhana, like the end of the workday on Fridays, we'll sit around, and especially if we have any musicians in town visiting or whatever, we'll kind of get all of the instruments. The farm manager plays ukulele, and so we'll sit around and play. And yeah, it's fun. We love it. It does take a lot of time, but it's all time well spent.
That sounds like the perfect bit of existence right there, helping and putting back the earth, and you get good songs out of it. So that's what more can you ask for on that one? You are going on tour, and you got incredible openers. I'll name a few of those with Duran Jones and the Indications, Ziggy Marley, Ben Harper, Lake Street Dive. I mean, these are right up all of our alleys right here. And talking about this, the Green Initiative, I mean, this is something that you've done for every tour for as long as I can remember. What's new with this one? I mean, how are you doing the the balancing?
Yeah, sure. We're kind of right in the point where we're sort of seeing what's possible with like all the changes. I mean, everything's starting to open back up, and so hopefully we'll be able to implement all the things that we were doing before. We're going to kind of have to see with like refill programs with cups and different things. The reusable cups. That's something we've kind of been working on a lot. And I was mentioning before the plastic problem in the ocean here in Hawaii, all the east facing islands, the windward sides of the islands. All the photos you see of Hawaii, you see the palm trees and beautiful beaches. But if you go to any windward beach and you actually walk the high tide line, it's just a colorful mess of plastic. And if you dig down into the sand, there's little bits of it's becoming part of the makeup of the sand. It's like this colorful sand that's little bits of plastic. And so you really see it firsthand here. And so that's always been a dichotomy for me, is like on tour, when you play a big festival and you see all the single-use plastic afterwards, and then being something I care so much about, the ocean. So it's something we've been working on for a long time. Many tours is trying to implement these reusable cup programs to cut down on the single-use plastic. So if we can get that going again, and on what level, we'll have to see. That's an important one for us. And really the main thing is just cooperating with all these local nonprofits. That's kind of the biggest thing for me, is being able to shed light. You know, I think my wife, she's always felt like her main job is taking the spotlight that's on me and trying to shine it on different things, so my head doesn't get any bigger than it already is. And so working with all these local nonprofits, I feel like it makes it where, instead of only thinking of the negative, of like trying to mitigate the negative environmental footprint, I feel like it's actually expanding on the positive, because people come into the show, get turned on to these really great groups that are working in their local community. And then long after we're gone, people stay active with those groups. And we've heard it time and time again that, you know, people who maybe got introduced and started by volunteering are now working at the group 2 years later. And we come back, you know, I've had people work all the way up to where they're kind of like leading these nonprofits. And the first time, maybe 10 years ago, they got introduced to them at the shows. So I know it works. And I'm like, that's the part that I love seeing, is just the participation of the local nonprofits at the show. So we'll keep that going.
Yeah, so far beyond the song. That's what's beautiful about it right there. Is that the sun that just popped out around you?
Yeah, it's coming and going. We got liquid sunshine right now. It's lightly raining, and then the sun's out. It's kind of weird.
You know, as we talk about the heaviness of the record, I kept thinking, but there's got to be light, because it's Jack Johnson. And how important is it for you, even in these songs, to find that light? Because it does arrive in these songs.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know if it's so important as much as it is just natural. I kind of, I love all kinds of music, and I listen to really, you know, everything from Bob Marley and all the stuff you'd probably think I'd listen to Radiohead, you know, and different things like that sometimes don't necessarily give any light, and there's like really dark. I love all kinds of music. But for me, naturally, it's just, I think I grew up like always playing with people around. Like it was always sort of these sing-along type of songs. So it's always very social. So I think even when it might be a darker topic, it's like I kind of woodshed them a little bit on the front deck at barbecues and stuff with friends. And so they always end up, trying to find a little bit of light. And I think you're right that is in the songs. Just not so much important, just natural, I think.
Just natural. Question from Jeff White here. How does surfing affect your environmental perspective and in turn your music?
Yeah, I think quite a bit, probably more than I realize. So Emmett's my wife and Emmett manage me, along with Kizzy, who's over there. Sorry, Kiz. But anyways, Emmett, he didn't know what he was doing. And he started pretending like he was my manager. I got this call, and somebody one time said, do you want me to call your manager, or are you going to call him? I had no manager at this point, and I was like so dumb. I was like a George Costanza moment where I was kind of like, oh, I'll tell my manager. And I was like, shoot, why'd I say that? I don't even have a manager. And so I hung up, and Emmett happened to be next to me. And I was like, hey, come with me to this meeting and pretend like you're my manager. And so he did. I mean, this is a real story. And then
yeah,
and he pulled it off a little bit. Look at him. That guy's not a manager. But anyways, why was I? Oh, because me and Emmett were just surfing the other day and together. And I was thinking about it. You know, we were really busy doing all this kind of like press stuff. And then you get to take these breaks. And when you go surfing, I mean, anybody has those things that bring peace to your life. The thing that's beautiful about surfing, you actually like detach from the land and you're floating. And now I'm just looking at Emmett's head because you talked or laughed or something. But anyways, like it's almost like you just get to be away from Earth for a little while. I mean, you're still on Earth, obviously, but it's just drifting around. It's a nice break. It's a time to meditate. Like whenever I'm having trouble finishing lyrics, if I just go for a surf, they usually finish themselves. And then as far as like the question about the environmental action, yeah, I think it's everything, like being surrounded and immersed by it. It's given me so much in my life that it's kind of just logical to do what you can to preserve it.
Yeah, Jeff had also asked if songs come to you in the water, which I think you were alluding to a little bit there. But that's got to be the rough point because, you know, to be able to hold on to that, you got the phone or something near you, like, yeah, no, it's a lot of trust, right?
I can honestly say I can think of like a handful of times, maybe 3 or 4 times where I've had an idea that I think is good enough to just go in, like, and I've only been out for 15 minutes and I'm like, oh, I got to go record that somehow because like otherwise I'll forget it. So they do come. It's kind of like a natural, just a low stress situation. So a lot of times like the little sparks will come. not necessarily digging into verses. Like for me, I think a lot about verses kind of being like dreams and choruses being uh, like a myth. Joseph Campbell had this thing where he talked about dreams are a myth for one person and a myth is a dream for a whole culture. And so like the choruses, if you think about a lot of times the part that everybody can kind of attach to, and then the verses sometimes can be pretty personal, and you cannot know what the hell somebody's talking about on the verse, but as long as the chorus kind of connects, Um, so anyways, the choruses seem to come, like those lines a lot of time that I'll just be repeating in my head all day and I don't know why. And that becomes the question I'll write the song around. That's kind of, I'd say like 70% of the time, I'll have a line that's echoing in my head, and then I'll just ask myself, what does this mean and why is this in my head? And then that's how I'll write the song, is trying to answer that question.
What, last year, if I remember right, if I got my timing right, last year was the 20th for Brushfire Fairytales, that debut album. And with everything closed down, I mean, did you get a proper chance to celebrate that? Is that something you're going to be doing more of on this tour? Put a spotlight on it in any way?
That's a good, actually, thanks for reminding me. I will. That's a good call. I hadn't really thought about it. And we didn't do a proper celebration or anything. But I have been actually, it's funny, I've been talking to JP Plenier, who's produced that record, and really, I mean, just a huge part of why I even get to have a music career. He was so supportive in the beginning. And yeah, we've been connecting more recently and talking, and he was really sweet about sending a lot of nice thoughts about this new album when he heard the first song and stuff. And so yeah, that was such a fun time. That was like, to think back to recording that album in 6 days, and we just had no idea it would connect on the level that the music did. I remember listening to the mixes with my wife in the car driving and saying, I just hope it's somebody's favorite album. I just hope that if like one person in the world, if this is their favorite album, that would be a success to me. At that point, we were barely filling up clubs and stuff. So I was like, can honestly say I didn't dream it would be a fraction of what happened. So it's fun. Yeah. So anyways, I think we will celebrate that album this summer and play a lot of songs off of it. It's a good call.
Brad Savage asks, have you ever done a radio show? And how do you feel about radio today? Also, can we all come by and do a remote broadcast from your studio in Hawaii?
Let's do it. I'll say yes, and then like one of my people will call you and say no. No, I'm just kidding. Totally joking. I love doing radio. I mean, honestly, like being able to just have an acoustic guitar and play the songs like at radio stations. Those are those kind of real connections and that happen that make it all feel really organic. And it's I love that on the first tours, especially when I had no kids, I had all the time in the world. So I wake up and it was like, go to a radio station, go play an in-store. And when you have all the time, I mean, being able to present the songs with an acoustic guitar and the voice, and then later that night, be able to play a show with the whole band was always a really, I don't know, I like that process a lot. I like doing radio shows. It's fun. It's nice to have to strip the song back to how I wrote it and perform them like that.
Yeah. For what it's worth, there is a song on this new album called 3 a.m. Radio, but I don't think it's talking about our kind of radio at that point. It's
yeah. It's more like trying to keep yourself awake at 3 a.m. when the family's all asleep and you're driving and you're just kind of like trying to find something that'll entertain you enough to keep you awake.
Yeah. So the representation is there anyway. We appreciate that. Jack, thank you so much for this. And again, Meet the Moonlight. I mean, just what a fantastic record every single time you do it. I so appreciate it.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
My thanks to Jack Johnson, and his new record is called Meet the Moonlight. Thanks again to Brushfire and Republic Records as well. And thanks to you for checking out this episode. Before you get out, again, I hope you hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with all the interviews that I put out every single week. New and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at all the usual spots, including iTunes and Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, NPR, WFPK.org, or of course here on YouTube for the video versions. After that, head over to WFPK.org. That's where you'll find me at 6 p.m. every single weekday for an hour full of song premieres, artist interviews, music news, and everything else. That's at WFPK.org. Consequence has your music and film news. You can also find me on the social media spots, mostly on Twitter, but occasionally Instagram and Facebook, all three of them at Kyle Meredith. Do hope you like and follow along. That does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.